Lee Hoyle groaned the moment he heard that. That's literally just the old flavor text from when Arcana was still only a game. But then Granfell's eyes narrowed, and his expression sharpened with sudden resolve. No matter how much noise and ceremony surrounds it, this is still my opportunity. He straightened to his full height and snapped the bright pink rubber dishwashing gloves on his hands with fierce determination. I shall depart at once, Granfell declared grandly, just as soon as I have vanquished these filthy dishes. Even in that moment, he sounded less like an ordinary man in a kitchen and more like a noble warrior preparing for battle. Lee Hoyle could only stare in speechless disbelief. A normal person would have dropped everything and left immediately. But Granfell was never normal. He moved to the rhythm of his own bizarre, unshakable logic, and there was simply no changing him once he had decided something. Meanwhile, at the Magic Tower, hundreds of people had already gathered, each carrying their own motives, ambitions, and expectations. Among the noise and restless movement, one striking young woman with pink hair sat quietly apart from the crowd, calmly observing the confusion around her. It has finally begun, she thought to herself, her gaze steady as the long-awaited moment unfolded before her eyes. She was the Mage Cleo, a member of the Magic Tower, and she watched the scene with a composed air that made her seem almost detached from the crowd's excitement. I wonder how all of this is going to end, Cleo mused, unable to hide a flicker of excitement beneath her calm exterior. I heard Guildmaster Marcello is delivering the keynote speech. Just then, a man who was too busy waving goodbye to his friends stumbled backward toward her without looking. "All right, guys, I'm heading out," he shouted. One of his friends instantly warned him, "Watch out." But it was already too late. The man lost his footing and fell backward. Cleo watched the whole thing with a cold, unreadable expression, not moving a single inch as the accident unfolded in front of her. Thud! The man hit something hard and let out a sharp cry of pain. "What the hell?" he shouted, confused and humiliated. His friend burst out laughing without mercy. "No way, this is killing me. Even if you're in a hurry to get to Yusra Island, maybe don't slam your face into a wall first." Safely standing behind her barrier, Cleo gave a faint sigh, as if the situation were embarrassingly simple. The man groaned and rubbed himself in frustration. "This is ridiculous. Fine, enough laughing already. Just help me up." His pride looked even more bruised than his body. Then a calm voice sliced cleanly through the noise. "You really shouldn't talk about people like that." The tone was quiet, but it carried enough weight to make everyone freeze. A woman wearing a witch's hat low over her face stepped forward and passed straight through the invisible barrier Cleo had cast, stunning everyone nearby. "Wait," one of them gasped, eyes widening. "Isn't this wall an illusion spell created by a Magic Tower professor for the conference?" The shock in the air was immediate and unmistakable. It was a high-tier ward, the kind of spell that made the path completely invisible to anyone without an invitation. To most people, it was an impossible boundary they would never even realize was there. Only then did Cleo begin to understand who had just appeared before her. "That's Jesse Haynes," she realized, startled. Even high-ranking mages had difficulty perceiving that barrier, let alone walking through it so casually. "I apologize," Cleo stammered. Jesse simply smiled with relaxed confidence. "There's no need to apologize." The three men standing nearby lowered their voices and whispered in open awe, unable to hide how shaken they were by what they had just witnessed. "Is that really Jesse Haynes?" one of them whispered. "Did she just walk straight through the wall?" Jesse calmly held out a card. "Are you today's guide? Here is my invitation." Cleo flushed slightly, tension creeping into her face. "Yes, I am responsible for escorting invited players to the grand ceremonial hall. You were the final guest listed to arrive, Miss Jessie." "Now that everyone has arrived," Cleo said, trying to steady her voice, "I will guide you inside at once." She turned as if ready to begin the escort immediately. Before they moved, Jessie's eyes shifted to the clipboard in Cleo's hand, studying it for a brief but deliberate moment. "Is that truly everyone?" Jessie asked quietly. Then she added, "Actually, could we wait just a little longer?" Cleo blinked in confusion. "Pardon." Jessie spoke slowly, her tone thoughtful and strangely certain. "I can't really explain it, but this mana recap still feels incomplete to me. Someone is still missing," Jessie said, as if she could feel it in the air even without proof. Every time he came here, the place was crowded and noisy, but today the atmosphere felt especially suffocating, thick with excitement and desperation. It was the kind of crowd that pressed in from every direction and left no room to breathe. Lee Hoyle was being crushed in the middle of that mass of bodies, squeezed from all sides as people shoved and pushed in the packed entrance area. "Let me through," he tried to force out, but the words barely traveled through the noise. Nearby, Jesse observed the scene and thought, "It's always busy here, but is the crowd even larger than usual today because everyone wants to get into the Yusra Island update as fast as possible?" The hunger in the air was impossible to miss. Then, without warning, a piercing shout rang out across the crowd, sharp enough to cut through all the surrounding noise in an instant. "It's Lee Hoyle," someone yelled. The reaction was explosive. "Lee Hoyle? Where? Is it really him? That's him. Oh my God, it really is." In the middle of the sudden uproar, Granfell gritted his teeth. "Damn it. I forgot my face has been plastered all over the news." The realization hit him at the worst possible moment. My fame has become a burden, he thought bitterly as cameras were shoved straight into his face from every direction. "Are you heading to Yusra too? Please, just one photo. Say something." The voices came nonstop. How annoying. Then someone shouted even louder. "This is the real Lee Hoyle right here." An overexcited fan completely lost control and lunged forward, trying to wrap him in a crushing bear hug. "Lee Hoyle, I've been your hardcore fan for 20 whole years," the man cried out with trembling excitement, his voice cracking from pure emotion. He looked completely overwhelmed, as if meeting his idol in person had just turned his entire life into a dream. "Just one picture. Take one picture with me, and I swear I'll leave you alone after that." But Granfell's expression darkened at once, his pride and inner nobility clearly offended by the man's clingy behavior. "You insolent brat," he snapped coldly. "Remove your filthy hands from my suit carrier this instant. Did no one in your household ever bother to teach you proper table manners? One ought to chew before swallowing and think before speaking," he added in a sharp, aristocratic tone, as though he were delivering a lesson to an uncivilized child rather than speaking to an overexcited fan in the middle of a crowd. He fixed the man with a hard, merciless stare that left no room for argument. "Begone." Nearby, Jesse watched the entire exchange with helpless disbelief. Honestly, telling a fan to get lost like that felt a little too harsh, even by her standards. Inside, Lee Hoyle suddenly had a thought. Wait a second, if people get turned off by Granfell's awful personality, maybe they'll stop chasing me around after this. Maybe this disaster could actually work in my favor for once. But the fan's reaction was the exact opposite of what he expected. The man looked as if he had just received a blessing from heaven. He could hardly believe his idol had personally insulted him. "I received his golden words," he shouted in bliss. "A toxic bad boy Lee Hoyle is way too cute. He's so aristocratic." The others nearby immediately joined in. "Please insult me too. Me next. Say something rude to me as well." Granfell's face sank into pure despair. Somehow, absolutely nothing worked against these lunatics. Camera flashes exploded all around him, blinding and relentless, as the chant quickly spread through the crowd. "Lee Hoyle! Lee Hoyle!" The noise rose like a wave, swallowing the entire area. Granfell swept his gaze over the scene with growing irritation. "This is impossible," he thought grimly. "This situation is completely untenable. I need to find another path immediately." His eyes landed on a wall some distance away. "That wall over there," he murmured to himself, focusing on it with sudden intent. To anyone else, it looked no different from the surrounding walls. It blended in perfectly, ordinary and unremarkable, giving no obvious sign that anything unusual was hidden there. But to Granfell's heightened senses, it was another story entirely. A faint but distinct aura clung to it, subtle yet unmistakable, like a thin layer of hidden mana humming beneath the surface. The crowd noticed the direction of his movement and became even more confused. "Mr. Lee, where are you going?" several voices called after him, baffled by his sudden choice. "That's just a dead end," someone shouted. But Granfell ignored every warning without even slowing down. He strode forward with absolute confidence and came to a stop right beside the flustered pink-haired girl. An awkward silence settled over the area for a brief moment, strange and heavy amid the chaos. Then Granfell spoke in a calm, icy voice, his confidence so firm it almost felt theatrical. As I thought, illusion magic. Granfell and Cleo stood there side by side, the two of them framed against the hidden barrier like some fated pair about to step into the unknown. Cleo stole a quick glance at the man standing perfectly straight beside her. He carried himself with such strange composure that it unsettled her. Her heart gave an unexpected flutter, and a mix of nerves, curiosity, and shy embarrassment rose all at once inside her chest. Who is this man? Cleo frantically flipped through her guest list, turning page after page under Granfell's silent gaze. Her thoughts raced faster with every second. I was sure every invited guest for this leveling mana event had already arrived. I checked this list over and over again. There shouldn't be anyone else. Not a single name is missing. Granfell turned his head slightly toward her. Is there a problem? He asked in a low, even tone. The moment those words reached her ears, Cleo's imagination instantly spun out of control and dove straight into the kind of dramatic romance fantasy she would have mocked in public. For one mortifying second, she pictured Granfell slamming one hand against the wall beside her, trapping her in place with his tall frame as his shadow blocked out the light. Then reality snapped back so hard it made her dizzy. Her face burned bright red, practically tomato red. And no, nothing like that, she stammered. You said you wished to attend the conference? Transparent magic circles quietly materialized in the air between them, spinning with delicate light. Cleo immediately started firing questions at him so quickly that Granfell barely had room to respond. The truth was simple enough. He had no invitation. Yet even while standing there awkwardly beside him, Cleo's thoughts churned into a storm of wild and increasingly chaotic speculation. This illusion barrier had been woven by the Magic Tower's elite professors, people whose skill stood at the very top. Even the chief mage himself would not casually break through such a refined, high-tier veil. So how in the world had this man crossed the perimeter so easily, as though it were nothing at all? Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo studied the flustered young woman beside him, a faint trace of concern crossing his face. What is the matter? Are you unwell? He asked aloud, sounding almost genuinely puzzled. Then he added, in his usual straightforward manner, is one not permitted to attend without an invitation? Cleo quickly crossed her arms, though it did little to hide the panic creeping through her. And no, that is not the issue at all, she said in a rush. The rules clearly state that anyone capable of detecting the hidden mana signature may enter, invitation or no invitation. But by the end, her voice had faded into a tiny whisper, her shyness getting the better of her. It's just that, this is the first time anyone has ever pierced through the mana veil with a single glance, she admitted, staring at him with open fascination. It feels unfamiliar to me, yet completely fascinating at the same time. I really want to know what your class is. Then she hurriedly added, trying to sound professional. Purely from an academic standpoint, of course. I see. Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo replied with complete indifference. And indeed, the mage who cast this deserves some praise. I merely passed through by a stroke of fortune. He said it so casually that it sounded almost insulting, then strolled forward with both hands tucked into his pockets. Inside, the human consciousness of Li Hoyle smirked to himself. To think he had just walked through a magic wall like it was nothing. My magic power must be over 1,000 by now, right? He already had a rough plan in mind. All he needed now was for his mana stats to rise past the threshold he was aiming for. Then a warning chime echoed quietly inside Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo's mind, crisp and sudden, as though the world itself had just acknowledged his arrival. Destination reached. He pushed open the radiant golden gates before him, and the sight beyond them surpassed every expectation. Truly magnificent, he murmured. Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo stood at the high vantage point like a king overlooking his domain. Below him, a young man stood upon a podium surrounded by emerald stone that pulsed with vivid, living energy. A booming voice rolled across the hall and immediately seized everyone's attention. Welcome to the gathering of the intellectual elite, it declared, grand and resonant enough to make the very air feel heavier. Around him, the crowd gasped in open awe, mouths hanging wide at the spectacle spread out before them. Beside Granfell, The girl stepped forward with shining eyes and unconcealed excitement, tugging lightly at his sleeve as if she could hardly contain herself. But then the atmosphere shattered. Sudden screams erupted from different corners of the hall as ceremonial magic violently flared to life. Flames roared up behind the civilians, and panic spread in an instant. Some people risked their lives just to film the chaos, while others clung to each other in terror. Ever since the world of Arcana had merged with reality, the NPCs were no longer mere data on a screen. They were living, breathing beings. And at the heart of the towering citadel, Marcelo wore a haggard expression so cold and severe it could freeze the blood in one's veins. Even so, his presence alone carried crushing weight, the kind that made an entire room instinctively fall silent. He was the youngest chief mage, the rumored successor to true magic, a figure whose name alone commanded fear, respect, and endless speculation. Lord Marcelo, the mage muttered reverently, while Jessie rested her chin on one hand with supreme boredom written all over her face. Marcelo was a certified genius, a man who always dominated these conferences by laying down groundbreaking theories to explain how this twisted, broken world now functioned. Jessie let out a dry, lifeless sigh. Then, suddenly, the pointed hat perched on top of her head snapped backward as if offended on its owner's behalf. "Apologize this instant," the hat barked. "Did you not hear me explaining how great Lord Marcelo is? How dare you call his wisdom boring?" Jessie twirled a loose strand of hair around her finger, utterly unimpressed. "How am I supposed to know? I'm bored to death and half asleep. Besides, seeing is believing, right? His speech is even duller than his classroom lectures." Standing at the podium, Marcelo lowered his eyes to the magic parchment in his hand and continued in a steady voice. "To many of you, this may look like nothing more than a discussion of skills, exploration, interference, operation. Terms I imagine most of you care very little about." Then his gaze sharpened and locked onto a specific figure in the crowd. "Even so, my student, to stand here at the summit of knowledge is the highest honor a mage can achieve." Jessie gave a quiet scoff. "Says who?" she thought. "If this were not a mandatory quest, I would never have set foot in this place." A soft voice beside her whispered, "Are you bored?" The question came at just the right moment, cutting through her boredom with curious timing. Ignoring the murmurs in the audience, Marcelo continued. "For various reasons, the Magic Tower has summoned the world's greatest adventurers. It is a scene worthy of any mana recap." His voice grew more solemn. "It is not merely the flow of mana that is shifting. We are sensing a collision of worldviews. Or, as you travelers call it in this leveling mana age, an update." At those words, a hush fell cleanly over the hall. Even Jessie, who had been so bored a moment ago, lifted her head in surprise. Marcelo continued, "You travelers are unfamiliar with our magic, just as we once struggled to understand your science and technology. And yet, from this point onward, we must walk the same road. We must find harmony if we wish to restore peace to this chaotic world." As he spoke, mana flared from his fingertips, sending bright, dazzling lights rippling across the hall like living stars. "Thus, this address concerns your so-called science," Marcelo declared. "I have seen within your technology the possibility for magical evolution." A low murmur spread through the hall at once. People exchanged baffled looks. Science? Magic merged with science? The very idea sounded impossible, yet no one could deny the seriousness in his voice. Then raw power burst from Marcelo's hands. Crimson mana swirled violently around him as he gazed into a forming fireball and spoke a single word. "Fusion." The sphere pulsed with unstable brilliance. "That is the name of this new formula, an advanced fireball born from the union of arcane arts and scientific theory. However," Marcelo continued, "we must proceed with great caution. When two opposing concepts such as magic and science collide, no one can fully predict the catastrophic side effects that may follow." The audience stood there stunned, struggling to process what they had just heard. Jessie's had seemed to sink into thought. Did the chief mage really invent something like this? Meanwhile, the young witch's lips slowly curled into a smirk. "Now this is getting interesting," Jessie thought at last, her boredom finally breaking. Marcelo's expression hardened further as he said, "We need adventurers who can understand both worlds." Whispers immediately swept through the hall like wind through dry leaves. Is this a quest? It has to be a hidden quest, right? Quests like this are legendary these days. The rewards must be insane. Wait, then why isn't the system window popping up? Is there some hidden requirement? Excitement and greed spread almost as quickly as confusion. Marcelo slowly scanned the room, his sharp eyes passing over the gathered adventurers one by one. Any questions? He asked, the words simple, but the pressure behind them unmistakable. Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo raised a hand without hesitation, and the mere motion somehow commanded the room's attention as if he had every right to interrupt the chief mage. Chief mage, he said in a cool, even voice, this new concept of yours appears utterly redundant. How do you intend to justify such an obvious flaw? Marcelo froze for the briefest moment, clearly caught off guard by the directness of the challenge. The crowd collectively gasped, the sound spreading in a wave of disbelief through the massive hall. What? He's actually challenging the Tower Master, someone whispered. No, it's worse than that. Does he even understand the theory enough to criticize it? Jessie spun around with wide eyes. Ah, it's that man with the strange mana, she realized at once. He's here too, she murmured under her breath. The elders nearby visibly trembled. Marcelo was infamous as the Viper of the Magic Tower. Provoking him was usually the same as signing your own death warrant. When he was displeased, the consequences were rarely mild. Nervous murmurs filled the air as Marcelo's face darkened little by little. By the way, who is that guy? I've never seen him before, someone muttered from the crowd. It felt as though a spotlight had suddenly fallen over Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo alone, his tall figure standing firm with crossed arms, completely unshaken under countless stares. Marcelo's voice dropped by a full octave, low and dangerous, the kind of tone that made everyone instinctively hold their breath. Can you explain why you believe that? Marcelo asked, his voice low but steady. The tension in the hall turned so heavy it felt sharp enough to slice through skin, and for a moment, even the air itself seemed unwilling to move. Everyone held their breath at once. Not a single person dared to interrupt. How would he answer? Was the chief mage truly listening to him seriously? Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo responded coolly, without the slightest hint of hesitation. Simple. I sense no harmony between them. He slowly extended one hand toward the podium, calm and certain. Magic and science are opposing forces at their core. If you force them into one vessel, dissonance is inevitable. And once that discord begins, overload and rejection are bound to follow. Then, in a single shocking instant, he reproduced the exact spell Marcelo had cast only moments earlier. I have seen this kind of collision before, he said evenly, his gaze fixed on the swirling spell. The clash between skill and sorcery is not new to me. Marcelo stood completely still, almost paralyzed where he was. For the first time in a long while, his mind seemed to blank under the sheer force of disbelief. Impossible, Marcelo thought. How did he replicate so effortlessly a spell that took me months to refine and master? He had grasped the instability in the mana flow almost immediately. Around them, the crowd broke into stunned whispers. That incantation, it's nearly identical to Lord Marcelo's. No, not nearly. It mirrors it perfectly. Wait a second. That face looks familiar somehow. Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo looked down at the fireball flickering in his palm, and a satisfied smirk curled across his lips. Just then, a scream tore through the hall. Wait, isn't that Lee Hoyle? Granfell ignored the uproar and continued calmly. You claim internal mana stabilizes the convergence process. That theory is incomplete. Even so, he glanced at the spell again. The results themselves are undeniably powerful. Inside, Lee Hoyle hesitated for a split second. Should I really be copying Marcelo's signature spell right in front of everyone? This thing burns through mana like crazy. But with my internal energy circuit, the efficiency is absolutely absurd. Around him, doubt and recognition spread through the onlookers like ripples in water. It really is him. That's definitely Lee Hoyle. Lord Marcelo's expression darkened before he finally broke the silence. His voice carried across the hall with deliberate weight. Lee Hoyle, listen carefully to what I am about to say. Then, with solemn dignity, the Archmage placed one hand over his heart. The gesture was formal, respectful, and so unexpected that it made the entire room freeze again. "I invite you," Marcelo declared, "to join me in unraveling the mysteries of this domain." His tone was sincere and grave, as if he were extending not just an offer, but the opening move of something far greater. Ding! A system window flashed before his eyes. Hidden Quest, Marcelo's fusion magic research. The Tower Master seeks your aid in transcending the boundaries of arcane art. It was the kind of classic scenario anyone would recognize from a Leveling Mana story. Decline. Accept. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo accepted without even a heartbeat of hesitation. Did my modified incantation trigger this entire sequence? He wondered at once. A cunning gleam sharpened in his eyes. Coming here was absolutely the best decision I could have made. A smug smile spread across his face, radiating pure aristocratic arrogance, and the crowd around him instinctively recoiled at the sight. "Look at that twisted smile," someone muttered nervously from the crowd. "He really thinks all of this is some kind of game. Does he seriously have no shame at all?" Another voice whispered in disbelief. Meanwhile, far away from the hall's suffocating tension, azure waves rolled against the bright sands of Yusra Island, and the pristine shore of that tropical paradise shimmered under the sun. A stunning girl stretched lazily beneath the sunlight and shouted with pure delight. "Lee Hoyle, doesn't this look exactly like the game graphics? I seriously can't wait for the raids to start." Then she laughed to herself and added, "Ugh, I should have packed my bikini for this." Lee Hoyle spun around and gnashed his teeth like a feral beast at the sheer absurdity of her attitude. "We are here for war, not for some swimsuit competition," he snapped irritably. But even as he said it, the beach around them was already packed and swarming with people. There were far too many of them. Players and tourists alike were treating the expedition like some ridiculous vacation package instead of a descent into danger. The pink-haired girl only laughed and planted a playful kiss on Lee Hoyle's cheek, clearly enjoying his irritation. "Why are you always so grumpy, Lee Hoyle? You're honestly adorable when you're mad," she teased with a mischievous little giggle. Lee Hoyle answered with nothing but a low, frustrated growl. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he barked. Nearby, a blond man watched the two of them with obvious admiration. "She's got guts," he said under his breath. Another adventurer joined in, sounding surprised. "Sure, I expected streamers and influencers to show up. But actual residents of Kenna? That's new." "Residents?" someone repeated. "You mean the NPCs are mobilizing too?" And just like that, a heavy pressure dropped over the area. Giant figures began marching forward, each step feeling like a warning tremor. At the front was Enoch of the Lee Hoyle Knights, a walking disaster in human form, leading the advance with crushing presence. "They're really here," someone muttered. Off to the side, a portly man leaned against a palm tree, narrowing his eyes as he watched the approaching force with growing caution. "So even the dark mercenary corps caught the scent of the loot," he said grimly. Then his gaze shifted. "And look over there, the Explorers Alliance has arrived too." One by one, powerful groups were gathering around the island like vultures circling fresh prey. The pink-haired girl suddenly jumped onto Lee Hoyle's back, as if this were all still some kind of game. "Of course they came," she said brightly. "The Island of Terror is the hottest zone in Kenna right now." Lee Hoyle let out a rough grunt. "Even if you ignore the Rift trials, these idiots are all here because they want to taste the despair this island is famous for." Her eyes flared with irritation as she clung to him. "Oh hey, get off already." Then another thought struck him. Do we seriously have to fight the NPCs too? Ring ring. A call suddenly came through. Lee Hoyle glanced at his comm device. "Ah, it's our team's little firecracker," he muttered. Without wasting time, he patched the call through and brought the device to his ear. A deafening scream blasted into his ears so loudly it almost made him pull the device away. "Boss, the tournament's over, and it was legendary." Lee Hoyle actually did something insane. He told the Archmage straight to his face that his formula was trash. Lee Hoyle burst into loud laughter. "What?" The caller kept going breathlessly. He challenged the Tower Master of the Magic Tower in front of everyone. Lee Hoyle clutched his sides, laughing so hard it bordered on hysterical. "That lunatic has a death wish," he said between laughs. The pink-haired girl slid down from his back and pouted with fake innocence. "I knew you were still holding a grudge against him. That's kind of cute." One of the nearby bystanders visibly shuddered at the strange energy between them. "She's terrifying," the bystander whispered. Lee Hoyle wiped a tear from the corner of his eye and asked, still grinning, "So what happened after that? Did the Archmage turn him into a pile of ash?" "No, and that's the craziest part," came the reply. Lord Marcello admitted he was wrong. He actually bowed to Lee Hoyle. Then he even handed him a hidden quest. The forums are exploding over it right now. It's a full-blown Mana recap moment. "What?" Lee Hoyle roared in disbelief. "Impossible." Meanwhile, far from the beach and its chaos, inside the silence of the Tower Master's office, Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo calmly reviewed a document spread out before him. Marcello spoke in a quiet, measured voice. "If you require any resources for our research, simply make a list. The Magic Tower and everything within it are at your disposal." His offer was so generous it almost sounded unreal. Inside, Lee Hoyle panicked instantly. Is he serious? Did I bluff a little too hard this time? But on the outside, he remained the perfect picture of noble composure, not allowing even the smallest crack to show on his face. "Anything I want. This is a jackpot," he thought. Still, he kept his expression cold and elegant. "Very well," he said. "Then I require these artifacts immediately." His tone was smooth, controlled, and shamelessly confident. At the top floor of the Magic Tower, Marcello stood before the three Supreme Elders. The room was solemn and ancient, wrapped in the kind of authority that made even prodigies feel small. He bowed deeply without resistance. "You summoned me, High Mages," he said, his voice respectful, though there was already a trace of tension beneath it. One of the elders finally spoke, his voice rough and heavy like grinding stone. "Marcello, our rising star." The words sounded almost like praise, but the chill underneath them made the meaning clear. "Rumors have reached us," the elder continued. "You intend to conduct sacred research with a mere adventurer. The Magic Tower does not involve itself in the affairs of players." His disdain for the idea was plain and unmistakable. "You have violated some of our oldest laws," another elder said coldly. "Why would a mage of your caliber lower himself so far?" Marcello accepted the rebuke without interrupting, but his eyes remained steady and clear, refusing to bend. "Traveler Lee Hoyle possesses a profound understanding of the arcane," Marcello answered firmly, "and his mana capacity rivals the figures found only in legend. In this age of chaos, his talents are not merely convenient. They are essential to the survival of this world." Marcello finished, his voice gaining force. "We cannot remain chained to archaic tradition while the world burns around us." Silence. One elder cut in sharply before he could continue. "True mages walk the path of knowledge alone," the elder declared. "We bear the weight of our own discoveries and the burden of our own failures. You are a scholar of the tower. You know this. You know the price of pride," the elder went on. "We will respect your foolish decision, but understand this clearly. You alone will bear the consequences of that outsider's actions." The warning landed with the weight of a sentence. Marcello remained silent. "We will speak of this no further. For now, leave." The order was absolute. As the heavy door sealed shut behind him with a deep echo, Marcello's expression slowly darkened. "Damn fossils," he muttered under his breath, the words slipping out with bitter restraint. "Always preaching responsibility. Blind fools drowning in their own arrogance while clutching dead ideals." Marcello spat inwardly. Do they even understand what responsibility means anymore? How much longer is the Magic Tower going to hide in the shadows while the world collapses? He finally slumped into a secluded corner and let out a long, heavy sigh. "Lord Marcello." Cleo appeared with a bright, eager smile and a stack of documents cradled in her arms, her timing almost absurdly cheerful compared to his mood. He turned, clearly surprised to see her there. "Cleo? What are you doing here?" Cleo straightened at once. "I gathered the artifacts Lee Hoyle requested. I was just about to deliver them myself." Marcello's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Then he extended a hand toward her. "Is that so? Then hand them over. I will deliver them personally." Cleo blinked in confusion. "Huh? But I can handle it, my lord." "You are already busy enough without running errands," she added quickly. Marcello's voice dropped lower. "I was preparing to head out anyway. There are a few things I wish to verify for myself." Cleo immediately straightened. "Oh, of course. Understood." Here you are, she said, passing everything over carefully. Cut to the Grand Library. Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo sat in elegant silence, turning the pages of an ancient tome one by one, as though the world's chaos could not touch him while he read. Marcello approached in measured silence and carefully set the items down on the polished mahogany table. The rich wood gave off a quiet sheen under the light, and the way he arranged everything made the moment feel less like a delivery and more like an offering made with genuine respect. Your requested items have arrived, Li Hoyle. Before him lay several neatly stacked grimoires along with an exquisite jewelry box that looked expensive enough to belong in a royal treasury. Marcello explained in a calm voice, "These are artifacts specially selected for mana regeneration." The Tome of Glacial Winds, Marcello said first, presenting it with care. Item level 550. Even at a glance, the ancient book radiated a cold, refined power that made it clear this was no ordinary artifact. It restores 50% of the mana consumed when casting ice attribute spells. Next, Essence of the Sunfire, level 600, which recovers 20% mana for fire attributes. And lastly, Forbidden Knowledge, level 590. Li Hoyle's soul practically screamed in shock at the absurd quality of the lineup. Yet Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo's face remained perfectly blank, as cold and unreadable as ever. I have also included the grimoires you specifically requested, Marcello continued, his tone careful and respectful. Then he looked at him directly and asked, "Tell me honestly, does this selection meet your standards?" Traveler Li Hoyle, Marcello waited. Granfell said nothing at first. Deep inside, however, one thought kept circling in his mind. Is this actually good enough? Slowly clenching one hand, he lowered his gaze toward the table and finally declared, "Chief Mage, the artifacts you have brought are indeed appropriate for my current stature." He delivered the line with such composed arrogance that it sounded completely natural coming from him, as though anything less would have been unworthy from the start. In his hand rested the tear of the sun god, a treasure of unique rank. Even without fully examining it, the artifact carried the kind of presence that made its value obvious the moment one laid eyes on it. But there was one crushing problem. Its restriction required a staggering level 620. Granfell's expression did not change even slightly, but inside, Li Hoyle was sweating bullets on Marcello's behalf. The only reason he had spoken so boldly was because his own miserable level was still just 134. Marcello, however, completely misunderstood the situation and let out a long, heavy sigh. "My apologies," he said sincerely. "It seems I have gravely underestimated your discernment." Rather than feeling embarrassed, he looked even more convinced of Li Hoyle's depth. Inside his own head, Li Hoyle screamed, "You're overthinking this, old man. Just give me something I can actually equip." But Marcello kept talking. "When you asked for an item that aids mana recovery, I had little hope of finding a perfect match. Yet it seems your insight runs deeper than I imagined. You already knew this artifact existed." With that, he presented the Staff of Verdant Wisdom. Unique rank. Required level, 100, Marcello explained. Its effect is simple but exceptional. The moment you cast a spell, it immediately restores 10% of the mana consumed. The description alone made it sound absurdly useful. A short silence settled between them as Granfell reached out and took hold of the staff. On the outside, he remained as composed as stone, but inside, Li Hoyle was practically dancing from happiness and trying not to scream in triumph. 10% mana recovery on every single spell. No cooldown, no catch, no delay. It was outrageously broken. If life were always this straightforward, I would have grabbed it without a second thought, Li Hoyle thought. Granfell then raised his eyes to Marcello and said in a calm, decisive tone, "I shall take this one." Marcello placed a hand over his heart and bowed deeply once again. "The moment you noticed the dissonance in my incantation, I understood you were extraordinary. But I never imagined your knowledge reached even this forgotten artifact." His voice held genuine admiration. "Once again, it is an honor to walk this path beside you." Granfell's face stayed fixed in its noble stillness, while Li Hoyle, underneath it all, was simply staring at the stick in his hand with honest curiosity. "Huh, it really just looks like a twig," Li Hoyle thought. But is this thing seriously that overpowered? The plain appearance of the staff only made its ridiculous effect feel even more unreal. However, Marcelo continued, his expression growing more serious. I cannot begin my research immediately. Not after you pointed out such a critical flaw in the logic of my formula. At that moment, a holographic system window flickered into existence before them, cold and clear. Status: calibrating. The quest related to Marcelo's fusion of magic and science had been temporarily suspended. Please await my summons, Marcelo said respectfully. Lee Hoyle understood right away. Ah, so that's how it is. I'm being time-gated until the next main scenario quest unlocks. Fastening the artifact neatly to his coat, Grandfell said. I shall await the day you perfect your craft. Marcelo bowed his head slightly. Thank you for your patience. Yet in his heart, the mage was thinking something far more intense. Adventurer Lee Hoyle, truly a peerless talent of this era. For a brief moment, an unspoken understanding seemed to pass between them without either side needing to explain it aloud. Grandfell closed his eyes and spoke in a solemn voice, heavy with dignity. If we combine our efforts, then perhaps we truly possess the power to rewrite the very laws of modern magic. Inside, however, Lee Hoyle was giving a huge mental thumbs up. Free gear really is the best gear. Marcelo, you're the MVP. And just like that, the scene shifted once more. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Kong TV. It's your boy Kong. Thanks to broadcasting Lee Hoyle's combat footage, the channel had exploded in popularity and was now sitting at an impressive 20,000 concurrent viewers, all of them hungry for more. But the live chat kept hammering the same question over and over again, so fast it nearly covered the screen. Where is he? Where did Lee Hoyle go? Give us our handsome Lee Hoyle, the viewers spammed shamelessly. As people continued streaming through the warp gate in the background, expectation thickened in the air. Surely the star of the moment would appear soon. Sensing the audience growing more restless by the second, Kong did his best to calm the stream down. Guys, relax. Come on. You all know the main character always shows up fashionably late. Don't get impatient on me. I'm staying right here until Lee Hoyle appears. But then the frame was abruptly hijacked. A man with a ponytail and a mask stepped into the shot, radiating the kind of menace that instantly changed the atmosphere. The chat exploded. A portion of the viewers recognized him immediately and began spamming his name in shock. It was Kinver, one of the rising supernovas, a player whose name had recently begun spreading with dangerous speed. Others were far less impressed. Kinver? That trash. How dare he crash Lee Hoyle's stream? Get lost. The chat turned vicious in seconds, flooding the screen with raw hostility and open contempt. Kinver's eyes twitched with fury as he read the reactions. That bastard Lee Hoyle, he thought darkly. Does he seriously never get tired of stirring up trouble wherever he goes? Ever since the game Arcana merged with reality, the supernovas had emerged as a new class of elite predators. They were ruthless climbers, the kind of people who would do anything for power, fame, or advantage. And among them, Kinver was considered one of the worst. Rumors of his brutality had spread everywhere, and people whispered that he was connected to a trail of vanished players. None of it had been proven outright, but the stories never stopped. In this leveling mana world, tales of Kinver hunting other players like prey had become disturbingly common, repeated often enough that almost everyone had heard them. And now, according to the mood in the air, he had set his sights on Lee Hoyle. Before walking off, he leaned toward the camera and spoke in a voice dripping with malice. Pass a message to that Lee Hoyle for me, he said. Tell him this. Too much fame can get a man killed. Kong, for all his loud fanboy loyalty, instantly folded in front of the lunatic. Why, yeah, okay. I'll tell him, he answered, visibly shaken. As soon as the killer left the frame, the chat burst back into chaos. Why isn't he here yet? Maybe he's scared. Is he avoiding the supernovas because he knows he'll get jumped the second he shows up? The tone shifted fast and ugly. Yeah, that has to be it, people began saying. In an instant, the narrative twisted. Now the rumor spreading through the stream was that Lee Hoyle was too cowardly to even set foot on Yusra Island. Kong finally snapped and shouted straight into the camera, unable to take the slander any longer. You guys are completely wrong. Lee Hoyle doesn't care about trash like that. When the time is right, he'll show up. I trust that man with my life." His voice shook with real conviction, and for once, even the chat seemed briefly startled by how serious he sounded. Meanwhile, the so-called main character at the center of all this noise was still at home, lounging around with absolutely no urgency whatsoever and sipping tea like none of the outside chaos had anything to do with him. "Is there actually any reason for me to go to that Yusra place?" Lee Hoyle muttered while sprawling on the floor. A moment later, he answered his own question without hesitation. "Nope, not one. Yusra region, the island of terror." On paper, it sounded exciting. In reality, it was a death trap. The minimum recommended level was 350, while Lee Hoyle himself was sitting there at a humble and deeply unimpressive level 134. More importantly, his class bonuses only applied properly against demons, and Yusra Island had none. Instead, it was filled with golden sand scorpions at level 390, venomous sand vipers at level 400, giant turtles, and flying thunder tigers at level 420. It was a nightmare lineup from top to bottom. "Just look at those levels," he muttered in disbelief. What kind of brain-dead demon hunter would grind there? If he stepped onto that beach right now, he would not merely lose a fight. He would get erased from existence. If there were even a few demons around, I might at least think about it. Then, all at once, a system window appeared before him. Class quest, the origin. The veil lifts, and the lighthouse shines. The last demon hunter must illuminate a world shrouded in evil. Temper your fragile vessel. Quest type, recurring. Objective, investigate the great sin manifesting on Yusra Island. The message felt heavy, almost prophetic, and impossible to brush aside. Lee Hoyle blinked once, then stared at the window in disbelief. What the hell? The sudden turn was so absurd that for a second, he honestly thought he had misread it. The 7 deadly sins, pride, sloth, gluttony, envy, wrath, lust, and greed. The old words surfaced in his mind one after another, carrying a weight that went far beyond ordinary game lore. In this world, the monstrous entities that embodied those cardinal vices were known as the great sins. They were not just powerful enemies. They were catastrophic beings, the kind of existence that could turn entire regions into disasters. This was lore Lee Hoyle remembered clearly from his old days playing Arcana, and now the system itself was confirming it. One of those terrifying beings had appeared on Yusra Island. The implications of that were anything but small. Granfell's voice cut cleanly through his spinning thoughts, sharp and decisive as always. "Before, we lacked a reason," Granfell said. "Now, we no longer have any excuse to remain here." His words landed with the kind of finality that made argument feel pointless. In the grand manner recap of his own life, if a great sin truly existed, then Granfell saw only one path before him. It was his sworn duty to hunt it down and annihilate it without hesitation. There was really no arguing with logic like that. Unfortunately, there was still one enormous, ridiculous problem. Yusra was a blazing tropical island, hot enough to melt a person alive, and Granfell absolutely refused to wear anything other than a formal 3-piece suit. Cut to the vivid blue ocean and the soft, endless sound of waves rolling over the shore, as if the island itself were quietly waiting for the chaos to begin. The crowd of streamers, tourists, and gawking onlookers let out one collective gasp, and camera flashes burst like tiny explosions across the shore. Look, he actually came. Of course he did. A true gentleman always keeps his word. In an instant, the mood shifted from idle excitement to full-blown awe. Lee Hoyle stood on the blistering sands of Yusra, tall and composed beneath the brutal tropical sun. He lifted one hand to shield his eyes, his face perfectly stoic, not a single crack in his expression. But deep inside, his soul was screaming. "It's so unbelievably hot, I'm actually melting alive in this suit." Then, in the very next moment, the heat stopped mattering completely. A sudden chill crawled straight down his spine. He slowly lowered his gaze to his own hand, just as dark violet energy began to coil around the island like smoke from some buried hell. An ominous presence had surfaced, one so unnatural that most people around him could not sense it at all. Passive skill activated, natural enemy. The reaction came instantly, without hesitation, as though his very existence had recognized a threat before his mind caught up. Granfell's entire demeanor tightened. Every instinct in his body was screaming the same warning over and over. Danger. Real danger. Not the noisy sort of trouble the island was already full of, but something deeper and far worse. What is this? He thought, his mind going cold. This monstrous power makes no sense. It is not even remotely comparable to the common trash roaming across this land. Whatever this thing was, it stood on an entirely different level. I can feel it, he realized. A vast abyss of dark energy is pulsing right beneath my feet. This island is not simply cursed. No, it feels more like the island itself is the demon. He stared toward the dense thicket ahead, while black miasma seemed to curl around him like a suffocating serpent, brushing against his senses in thick, poisonous waves. If my instincts are correct, then my passive skill, natural enemy, should be crying out for blood right now. Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo let a slow, sinister smile curl across his lips, his eyes shining with the delight of a predator that had just caught the scent of worthy prey. Hiding beneath my feet? How quaint. You foolish demons are practically begging to be crushed. Internally, however, Li Hoyol was drooling over the possible loot. While he kept up that flawless noble facade, the scene cut over to Huang's live broadcast, which was faithfully capturing every second for the public. Are you guys seeing this right now? Huang shouted into the stream, barely able to contain himself. The one and only Li Hoyol has finally entered the death zone of Yusra Island. His voice cracked with hype as the viewers flooded in. The orange-haired cameraman was practically trembling with excitement. Chat, tell me you're seeing this. Somebody clip this right now. And seriously, does this man ever take that suit off? This mana recap is about to become legendary. Heat wave, storm, blizzard, whatever, he never abandons the drip. And no, before anyone asks, that is not dye, fam. That silver hair is 100% natural-born nobility. He's the real deal, Huang muttered as he trailed behind more carefully, his voice dropping into a near whisper. Look at the way he moves. Every step is calculated, every shift precise. Is he sensing some hidden dungeon? Or is he about to drop a tactical nuke on these monsters? Even the way he watched Li Hoyol made it feel like he was following a myth instead of a man. Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo glanced back over his shoulder, his face glowing with absurd, almost divine confidence. Inside his head, though, it was total panic. I came in with all this hype, and now I'm actually terrified. I just need to find one weak mob to bully before I die out here. His mental scan ran through the threats around him. Level 400 Golden Sand Cyclops, absolutely not. Level 400 Jewel Turtle, too tanky. Level 420 Flash Thunder Tiger. Run away. Run away right now. Then at last, his eyes locked onto a more manageable target. Level 390 Golden Sand Scorpion. Perfect. A nice soft target. Something I can actually hit without getting vaporized. On the outside, he still looked like an ice-cold executioner. On the inside, he was shaking like a leaf. I let those ruins fool me. I forgot this whole place is a high-level death zone. He grimaced, desperately trying to keep his composure intact. It is merely a slightly stronger opponent, he told himself. Nothing worth making a fuss over. Meanwhile, Huang stared at him with shining, worshipful eyes. All right, chat, let me set the rules here. I'm only filming Li Hoyol as long as I don't disrupt his flow. The second he looks even a little annoyed, I'm cutting the feed. We respect the king in this stream. The chat exploded in agreement. Protect Li Hoyol at all costs. Don't get spotted, streamer. I would literally polish his shoes. If Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo gets angry, you're finished. Huang puffed up proudly. Relax, guys. I'm basically a stealth rogue right now. Sometimes dungeon traps don't even trigger for me, Huang bragged. And then, in the same instant, Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo spun around sharply as his senses flared. A huge surge of killing intent erupted from the ground beneath them like a buried weapon breaking free. Huang froze on the spot. What was that sound? He whispered. Then a sharp metallic clang split the air, loud and violent enough to make everyone jolt. A soldier with a high orange ponytail had intercepted the ambush at the last possible second, his twin blades crashing against something monstrous underground. He hacked wildly at the creature as it burst up from beneath the earth. It's the pack leader. This damn thing chased us all the way here. Archer, what are you doing? Shoot it before we all die. Another orange-haired man, this one with neatly parted hair, raised his staff in obvious panic. I can't get a lock, he shouted back. It's too bright. I can't see it clearly enough to aim. The reflection is blinding me, he cried. I can't aim. Damn it. Are we really helpless here? Then the beast stepped fully into view, majestic and terrifying, its body prowling forward beneath shimmering diamond blue scales. Its crimson eyes burned with murderous fury, and a low growl rolled out of its throat hard enough to shake the air itself. It bared fangs sharper than obsidian blades. A level 4 20 flash thunder tiger. The sheer violence in that roar sent Huang tumbling backward like a rag doll tossed by a storm. He threw an arm over his face while the live chat exploded into absolute madness. What is that thing? Flash thunder tiger. If I survive this, you people better donate. A level 420 boss monster just spawned on stream. Wow, that roar just wrecked my audio. At that very moment, the soldier was thrown backward and crashed straight into Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo. The noble frowned deeply and brushed off his suit with visible irritation before even looking at the man properly. This, he said coldly, is exactly why I stated that I had no need for a party. You incompetent fools are only getting in my way. The soldier looked up from the ground, trembling from head to toe. What? Li Hoyle. His voice came out small and cracked, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. The realization hit both of them like a speeding truck. For a second, all they could do was stare, stunned by the absurdity of the situation. The mage's jaw dropped wide open. No way, he muttered. That can't be real. Why is a superstar like him in a hellhole like this? The man blurted out in disbelief. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo, meanwhile, remained perfectly stoic, as though he had not just been dropped into the worst possible situation. I would also very much like to know the answer to that, he thought bitterly. I came here hoping for a scorpion salad, and instead the universe served me the strongest boss on the whole island. Wonderful. The beast stepped closer, its killing aura pressing down so hard it felt like the air itself had turned heavy. This thing is only 10 levels below Count Escura, he realized instantly. Running is not an option. It would hunt me down and kill me in seconds. Damn it. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo slowly raised one hand, his eyes narrowing into slits. This situation is already bad enough, and the sunlight bouncing off its crystal hide is making it even worse. My accuracy is a mess. I cannot see properly. Then I only need to make sure it cannot move. He extended his palm, gathering mana with sudden focus as his plan sharpened in an instant. Evasion means nothing, he said coldly, if the target is paralyzed. The logic was simple, ruthless, and effective. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo locked the beast in place with crushing invisible force, pinning it as though the air itself had turned into chains. The nearby soldiers stared in open disbelief, too stunned to even blink. What kind of magic is that? One of them gasped, his voice thin with shock. None of them had ever seen control that overwhelming before. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo raised his hand again, and above it formed a huge sphere of violently swirling flame. Let us test, he murmured inwardly, the firepower of this leveling mana logic. The spell grew hotter, brighter, more unstable by the second. Fireball. He spoke the word with calm finality, as if casually signing the beast's death warrant. The explosion that followed was biblical in scale. Fire erupted outward in a roar, painting the surrounding forest in colors that looked less like nature and more like the end of the world. Huang could only gasp in raw disbelief. What the hell just happened? He shouted. The monster vanished inside a vortex of crimson fire, swallowed whole by the blast before anyone could even properly process what they were seeing. The scene was terrifying and beautiful all at once, the kind of sight people would remember for the rest of their lives. The chat moved so fast it became an unreadable blur. Is that even magic? Is he some kind of spirit lord? That doesn't look like any normal skill. Li Hoyle is my religion now. Weren't they calling him an alchemist? LOL, forget that. He's clearly a destruction mancer. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo slowly lowered his hand and closed his eyes with the grace of a saint who had just swatted away a fly. System, you have successfully defeated the Flash Thunder Tiger. Level up. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's inner child immediately started cheering. I actually got the last hit. Marcelo's fireball spell is disgustingly overpowered. And this item restoring 10% of my mana every cast is completely broken. The ponytailed soldier stood frozen where he was, his brain visibly short-circuiting from what he had just witnessed. That's impossible, he stammered. He just one-shot a level 420 boss. Even saying it aloud made it sound ridiculous. The scene shifted away from the scorched battlefield and into a dense, lush part of the forest deeper inside the island, where the air felt thick and the tension had not eased in the slightest. A fist slammed hard into the trunk of a tree. Damn it all. A system window identified the furious man as Fred, rank 3 swordsman and guild master of the Red Wolves. The frustration rolling off him was so intense it felt almost physical. "We've been in here for hours," Fred growled. "If we retreat now, we'll look like complete clowns." Then he barked at his exhausted team, his temper cracking through the humidity. Beside him stood another Red Wolves elite, a rank 7 veteran with a hard stare. One guild member nervously stepped forward. "Guild Master, I strongly recommend we regroup all the splinter teams," the member said carefully, choosing each word like it might decide whether he lived or died. "We're bleeding out here," he continued. "There's even a rumor that the Silent Guild is piercing straight toward the center with a single concentrated strike force. Meanwhile, our scattered units are getting torn apart by elite mobs. We're not making progress anymore. We're just losing people." Fred ground his teeth. "I know," he snapped. "Do you think I'm blind? I split our forces to maximize loot and stop the Burke Guild from snatching the first clear," Fred admitted bitterly. "I got greedy. That's the truth of it. I underestimated how brutally strong the monsters on Yusra Island really are." He rubbed his chin, swallowing his pride with visible effort. "Damn it. I hate saying this, but you're right. Call them back. Pull the teams together." At that moment, another member ran up holding a phone. "Sir, call from the West team. You need to hear this." He handed the device to Fred. On the screen, the mage with parted hair looked pale, like he had just seen a ghost. Fred pressed his fingers to his temple and exhaled. "Calm down. I'm recalling everyone," Fred said. "We're heading to your position." But the mage cut him off immediately. "No, don't come here. We already cleared the route." Fred blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? Explain. How did you clear it?" Fred demanded. The mage's voice trembled with lingering shock. "It was Lee Hoyle. Lee Hoyle is here." Then the camera shifted and showed the burning forest behind him, still glowing from the aftermath. "He's already arrived," the mage said, still sounding like he could barely believe the words coming out of his own mouth. The message landed like thunder, announcing that the balance of Yusra Island had already begun to change. Fred's face drained of color in an instant. The name hit him like a blow to the chest. Lee Hoyle, that rookie. The same newcomer everyone had been whispering about. What is he doing here? Fred blurted out, barely able to hide his disbelief. Before anyone could answer, another subordinate came rushing into the room, breathless, a tablet held high in shaking hands. "Sir, this is urgent," the man said, voice tight with panic. "We just received a report from the attendees at the Magic Tower conference." He jabbed a finger at the screen, forcing everyone's attention to the data. Lee Hoyle has accepted a personal quest directly from Archmage Marcelo. On top of that, he has become the first player in history to be granted a private lab inside the Magic Tower.